Hello and welcome to the special edition of Forces First from Visakhapatnam. This edition of Forces First is special because it is taking place at a time when the International Fleet Review is already going on. We are witnessing Exercise Milan. We are having about 74 foreign navies, about 19 foreign ships are participating in this. Shravan, it's an exciting time to be here. We are seeing a lot of buzz, a lot of activity, a lot of exchanges, choppers flying, and technology on display, isn't it?
Well, the entire idea of the International Fleet Review for many would be, is it on the shoreline what you see, an array of several warships from different countries? Is it only about that, or there is much more than just the fleet that we basically see? And what exactly does India really achieve with the number of countries that are essentially participating, and what message are we really sending across in terms of how India has basically transformed as far as the Fleet Review is concerned? And perhaps when it comes to an issue like this, no one better than the man who is man of the moment, along with us, of course,
Absolutely.
with the team, but who has been part and parcel of it. What we are seeing finally today is the end product.
Right.
What goes into building this, perhaps I would say at the first thought it would be quite a nightmarish affair to actually bring together so many people together,
Right.
so many countries together, and the nitty-gritties of maintaining those very relations is something which perhaps is the biggest challenge here.
Well, absolutely. And we are joined by Captain Akhilesh Menon, who will be telling us much more about the International Fleet Review, about Exercise Milan, and all the activity that is going on. Captain Menon, thank you very much for joining us. We're seeing so much activity happening, so many countries, so many navies participating here. How did you put the show together? There are so many out of these participating countries that don't see eye to eye when they are independently in the open seas. But then the Indian Navy has managed to get them here together. How did you bring this magic to reality?
At the outset, thank you for getting me into the show and giving me an opportunity to answer that question. Yes, a lot of planning happens in preparing the place for an International Fleet Review. A lot of planning happens at the Naval Headquarters level at New Delhi, and also here at the Eastern Naval Command in Visakhapatnam. Sending out invites to various countries, getting them to come here, be a part of the lineup for the International Fleet Review. It requires a lot of effort, and we have a whole team of officers and men who have helped us put up this together in this fashion.
What is it that, could you tell us about what exactly are we going to witness? So you also have, the harbor as well as the sea level, phase of exercise. What will exactly be taking place during these two phases, sir?
I'll just put things first perspective here. The International Fleet Review is the ceremonial part, and it's different from the exercise itself. Exercise Milan is an exercise of multilateral countries, multinational countries, and we started with a small group of 4 countries in 1995 at then Port Blair, now Sri Vijayapuram. So there are two different things. So, and we just witnessed the 3rd International Fleet Review here in Visakhapatnam on 18th of February. The last 2 editions were in Mumbai and Visakhapatnam respectively, 2001 and 2016. So that is the ceremonial part. Now, once we have the assembly of ships here, we got about 19 ships participating, 2 aircraft from foreign countries, friendly foreign countries. So when we have this assembly of ships for a ceremonial event, we capitalize and make it into exercise multinationally. And this time's edition of Exercise Milan is a manifestation of, I would say, the operational part of this phase. So in that also, we have the harbor phase and the sea phase. Harbor phase includes subject matter expertise exchange, getting to know each other. So to achieve interoperability, to achieve exercises and achieve exercise at sea, you need to break ice and prepare for it. So yeah, it's a process, but it's a well laid down process. And of course, we proceed to sea for about 4 to 5 days and exercise at various levels and then come back.
You know, Pranav, Captain Menon, you make it sound very simple of bringing these nations together. I'm sure it isn't like that. I would say that we have achieved, in a way, the impossible. What's the backstory? How did you manage? How did the Indian Navy really manage to bring warring factions together? And not just that, putting them to even participate in an exercise.
Yeah, very good question, actually. As you would know, 74 countries are participating in this exercise. And including India, it's 75. And definitely that's not an easy task. We have Milan harbor face and the sea face. And we have countries ranging from Russia, Iran, to United States of America, Australia, Japan, participating in this. So bringing such a vast, I would say, type of countries in under a single umbrella was not an easy task. Probably that shows that the seas or the global maritime commons, we can do much more when we are together. That is why the motto of Milan itself is collaboration, cooperation, and camaraderie. So I would just say that it took a lot of effort, a lot of planning, and
but there has to be some sort of a trust factor.
Yes,
because
definitely.
We are essentially not only talking about lining up of warships, international warships along the shoreline, but we are also not only participating in multiple exercises, we are also talking about shared protocols, procedures. There is much more than what meets the eye right now. There is not many things that we perhaps know in the outside. So tell us, how do you really bring them on the table itself and to tell them, look here, trust me, and share something that is going to be seen as shared practices, shared naval practices?
I think Indian Navy as a preferred security partner or the first responder in the Indian Ocean region itself is the main reason why countries ranging from Iran, Russia to Australia or Japan is participating in this exercise. We have different countries with different perspectives or different global interests or different challenges. And even the operating systems. Okay, I'll put it much more simpler terms, in more layman terms. Now, when we are exercising at sea, there are various publications, various codes, various standard operating procedures. The first step itself is language. If you look at it, English is not the native language of all these countries. So how do you talk to each other? How do you talk to each other at sea? How do you talk to each other when you are not in line of sight? How do you talk to each other when you don't have a standard communication equipment which is encrypted or which is secure? So these are challenges. So I would say when we do exercises like this, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. There are a lot of orders that comes in. There are a lot of briefings. There are a lot of, I would say, brass tacks that goes behind it. So it's a challenge, but we have graduated to a certain level that we can operate with each other with confidence, interoperability at sea, and also trust each other.
If I may ask you, Captain Menon, when it comes to the role of the Indian Navy, there is one aspect which has become perhaps a dominant issue. We're talking about living in troubled times, perhaps fishing in troubled waters too. A lot of changes are essentially happening in terms of trade choke points. We are looking at claims and counterclaims, what we recently saw with regards to United Kingdom versus Mauritius. Keeping all of that, somewhere down the line, Indian Navy has been able to navigate all through these issues. What is it that works for the Indian Navy, particularly keeping in mind things around us seem to be extremely turbulent in nature?
You're right. When you're talking about the Navy, our role is just not war fighting. I'll break it down much simpler than that. we have the conventional role, the military role, which we are supposed to do and guard the country. But we also have duties like a humanitarian assistant, a constabulary role, a benign role, or a diplomatic role. So when we are deployed at sea, for example, we are not just deployed for a particular role. You have to be adaptable to the situation which is happening. I'll give you an example. Ships are deployed in the Arabian Sea or in the Bay of Bengal. Today, as a captain of a ship, someone gets a call that there is some disaster, or maybe there's been a shipwreck, or maybe a tsunami brewing, or you need to provide succor to some part of the world. Your ship is redeployed for that. Your ship is redeployed to fight probably a fire, or probably give some humanitarian assistance. We have done it in the past. You take it Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Yemen evacuation. We have done it all. And the second day, when you wake up in the morning, you get another call that a ship has been hijacked or attempted piracy at a particular place. You respond to that, and you don't respond to a particular flagged vessel. If you say a country, a flag of say Liberia is flying. When I say flag of, means a merchant vessel which is flying the flag of Panama, say. So you respond in a situation and you adapt as the day as the challenge. So as a country, as a navy, we are quite flexible in the role that we are meant to do. So coming back to your main question, when you have a problem in hand, it's better that we cooperate with each other and then find a solution to it. When the ships are deployed in the Gulf of Aden or any other anti-piracy operational area, you can't just act alone. You have to cooperate with other forces, other friendly forces, and get the job done. And as I said, it can range from a benign role, it can be a constabulary role, it can be a diplomatic role.
How are we essentially viewed? Because, Pranav, with the kind of role that you've played in the past, can I ask you, how are we essentially viewed in various other countries as far as the Indian Navy is concerned? Is it more on the role that, okay, here is a role that they play as for deterrence? Here is a Navy which gives a lot of importance to human disaster relief assessment. How is it essentially viewed overall?
Or I would answer it, I would say that the answer to the question lies in the question you asked earlier. You said, how did we manage to get these countries here? 74 countries for exercise Milan, 19 ships and 2 or 3 aircraft from friendly foreign countries with various national interests. They're all here today. So I would just say that if we were not considered as a binding force or a professional force, these countries would not have attended this exercise, or these countries would not have been part of the International Fleet Review. So the answer lies in that question itself.
Do you make any sort of concessions? Because if you are bringing in too many countries, do you have to make any concessions, or would you say that it is more of the brand value of the Indian Navy?
I won't say concessions. Concessions, maybe for a want of a better word, I would say we are sensitive to the requirements. We are sensitive to each country's geopolitical interests and each country's sensitivities. So, for example, if you are going out to sea for exercise Milan, we make sure that the groups that we exercise with, we are there in all the groups, but the groups that we are exercise with, or the groupings that we make, are like-minded countries, or we are sensitive to the fact that if a particular country A, is uncomfortable talking to country B, so we don't embarrass our guests. All are guests for us, and all we are partner nations to us. So we have to take that conduct, or rather the code of conduct. We have to carry out the briefings, carry out the planning preparations accordingly. So a lot of intensive planning happens a lot of preparations happen to make sure that the exercise goes well, it's conducted safely, and at the same time, later on, there is no diplomatic issues that follow from these countries. Thank you.
In fact, gunboat diplomacy, they say, is, has often, in fact, been the much celebrated term when it comes to the diplomatic role of the Navy. Now, in exercises such as this, there is so much human interaction with the foreign navies that you're having. Can I ask you, how are those bonds or the equations that you've created over years with these friendly foreign admirals and captains and commodores of other navies? How do they come to our help in diplomatic, in building diplomatic fortresses, so to say?
Yeah. So it is.
Can you give us some examples of, if that's happened in the past?
Absolutely. So we've had 3 international fleet reviews so far. And not just fleet reviews. We've had, n number of foreign trainees in our institutions, not just the Navy, Army and Air Force and other defense forces as well. So if you pass out of an institute like the National Defense Academy, which I'm a proud alumnus of, when you pass out of the academy, you are known as an ex-NDA 98th course or ex-NDA 100th course. So ex-NDA 98th course means I am, whether he's from India or from other friendly foreign country, he's ex-NDA 98. Then we connect at that level. I used to be an instructor in the Navigation and Direction School a decade ago. We had many student officers from across the globe, from Asia, from Oceania, etc. So apparently I would probably quote a personal incident. When I was deployed overseas for an appointment, I bumped across so many student officers or so many senior officers whom we've trained together, and then we instantly bond. And that's at the human level I'm talking about. I'm not talking, big strategic level. At human level, you connect. You connect with family. You rekindle old memories that you had with them. The more you train together, I would say it's diplomatically, it's an unseen dividend that you are actually gaining. And every day as we speak, we have the International Maritime Seminar. We have many Indian alumni, I would not say Indian alumni, foreign alumni from Indian institutes today speaking. And they are all chiefs of navies and heads of their delegations. So, whether at sea or in harbor, this dividend of connecting, whether in an exercise or training together in academy or training together at sea, it pays much more dividends than actually you can fathom. It's easier said than done. It's very difficult to explain. Here, but yes, it's very, very helpful.
Now that you're exercising together, now that there are so many platforms and, you're breaking bread together, what is the common desired outcome of an exercise such as this?
Firstly, building bridges of friendship, which you rightly said, and, united through oceans is one, I would say strategic level, aim of the exercise. But beyond that, you are learning new skills. You are exchanging, more, I would say, specialized subject matter expertise. You are exchanging that. You are trying to learn from each other, trying to learn how you can do things better. We're all, in a way, we are all wearing whites or naval uniform, maybe of different shades of whites or maybe different, I would say, different types of uniform. But we are all, naval officers going to sea. So the basic exercises, the basic standard operating procedures are more or less similar. So it's not that we are doing better than others or others are doing better than us. We can always learn from each other. We can, smoothen the procedures. We can smoothen and we see who is doing it better and develop it, progress into more advanced level of cooperation, advanced level of exercises. So it's a learning process. You are always learning. You don't stop learning.
But Captain Man, I mean, this is one question I have, is that when there are military to military interactions, there are often those areas or those capabilities that you do not probably want to always expose to howsoever friendly any navy is. How do you deal with these kind of certain things where you're not supposed to go all out, show everything, but yet display your capabilities?
Yeah, very good question, in fact. Yes, we are not supposed to share a certain amount of data or a certain amount of certain type of procedures because they are highly sensitive, classified, and you don't want to share with a country A or B or C. Yes, there are levels of exercise. Depending upon the trust that we have in each other, depending upon, of course, the clearance that we get from our higher authorities, there are certain things that we can share that we can't share. There are protocols in place for that to ensure that we don't pry into each other's so-called classified stuff, because once we do that, then we lose trust. So it's all on mutual trust, mutual respect, and lay down protocols, so to say, and briefings, preparations.
Is there any, is there a chatter within the International Navy? Is there something what we would say, let me simplify and say, is there anything about the Indian Navy that the international navies are especially envious about?
I'm not sure about that, but definitely the quality of our manpower or the quality of our men, I'm sure is definitely an envy of many countries. Having been deployed overseas so many times, I can say that the men and women of Indian Navy are amongst the best in the world. And many times, many senior officers from advanced navies have, walked up to me and asked me, what do you do? How do you train these people?
Right.
And it's no wonder that we have one of the largest, number of people or number of foreign students in our training academies. So we have a very, very highly respectable human resource in our armed forces, especially the Navy. So they're highly skilled, highly motivated, and nothing is impossible for them.
Captain Menon, I want to share this with you as we end this interaction. The purpose of perhaps doing this special edition of the International Fleet Review from Visakhapatnam was not just about the imagery here. It is also about what we have essentially achieved. For many, these would be defining moments, defining images, sometimes ceremonial in nature, but I would say that it is beyond the ceremonial nature of a kind of review that we are essentially looking at. I want to end by asking you, Captain Menon, millions of people would be watching this today. What would you tell them? That what is it that India has achieved through one of the biggest fleet review ever conducted by a nation?
I can be proud to say that as an Indian, we should all be proud of our Indian Navy, what we have achieved in terms of maritime security, partnerships, and the professionalism of each and every person serving in these ships, submarines, and aircraft. We are indeed a professional force, and we would like to be the preferred security partner and the first responder to any crisis in the Indian Ocean region.
Well, thank you very much, Captain Menon. And through you, on behalf of the entire Republic Media Network, we would like to thank every naval officer who's put their heart and soul to put together what many would say unthinkable, a spectacular job that has essentially been done by the Indian Navy. Congratulations to you and every naval officer of the Indian Navy.
Well, absolutely. Thank you very much. You're the captain of IFR. You took time out of your busy schedule and gave us time. It was wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Jai Hind.